Samud, that's an Arabic word that means steadfastness, perseverance, resilience. It's become synonymous with the Palestinian people as they stand in defiance against Israel's occupation, expulsion and ethnic cleansing for the past 76 years and counting. And for the people in Gaza, resilience is something that has become a way of life. After a year-long campaign of destruction, forced displacement and genocide by Israel, they have shown the world the true meaning of the word. From the rubble, they seek life. In moments of despair, they find hope. And in times of sorrow, they still find joy. From trauma, they've gathered strength. And from scarcity emerged ingenuity. Welcome to the final day of our special coverage of the genocide in Gaza, 1 year on. Today, we bring you stories of resilience in the face of adversity. Osama bin Javaid begins our coverage.
Palestinians in Gaza like these personify generosity and care. As Israeli strikes and evacuation orders forced people to leave, those with some dates and water distribute them among those who have nothing. Since fighters from Hamas and other groups broke out of Gaza on October the 7th last year and attacked Israel, all infrastructure in Gaza has come under systematic attack by Israel's military, including alternative sources of energy. Some batteries from unexploded munitions and drones are converted into power banks. This man used a tin can and a piece of wood to make multi-plug sockets so others can benefit from rare sources of electricity. Armed with some knowledge of physics and a lot of pedaling, broken bikes are used to charge batteries in Gaza to provide people with some light in their tents overnight. Israeli forces filmed themselves targeting water stations and destroying wells and pipelines, leaving the people of Gaza without sanitation and thirsty. To make seawater drinkable, people used what limited resources and scraps of material they have to make their own devices to filter and clean water and keep it safe from waterborne diseases. Others used planks of wood and plastic containers to build overhead tanks in their tents to hold water.
We had this idea to lift water without electricity and even without giving a prior warning to the neighbours, fearing violating their privacy. Pour water here like this, and by this way, by lifting the wood piece, the water we have inside the jerry can will pour into the tank.
Gaza is the only man-made famine in the world, and Israel has only allowed a fraction of aid needed for a besieged and starving population, so nothing goes to waste. And while some Palestinians were forced to crush animal feed to use as flour, some rare supplies did come in. At makeshift clay ovens, mothers turned into master chefs.
Honestly, this was a really difficult task. It was 42 degrees when I was facing the clay oven. It felt like I was literally getting baked. We began baking cupcake after cupcake. This is our 300th cupcake. Here's Salma enjoying it. She said it's delicious.
When bombs and small portions of aid fell on them simultaneously, they used the leftover parachute canopies to provide shade from the searing heat. Fatima was forced from her home in Beit Hanun, and she walked all the way with her beloved pet. She says, "If I'm alive, he's alive. If I die, he's dead." No other modern conflict has killed so many children nor taken so many limbs. Yet people here persevere because they say their occupiers can't break their spirits. No matter how tough the siege, bombings, suffering and death is for them, the people of Gaza carry on. And with their resilience, ingenuity and human instinct for survival, they survive, one day at a time, with dignity. Osama bin Javaid, Al Jazeera.
Teenage volunteers in central Gaza are teaching children how to sing and play musical instruments. Displaced themselves, they're helping traumatized kids to smile again. Some have lost their limbs, their homes and their family members and still aren't safe from Israel's bombing. Our correspondent in Hudri went to the school to see how music is transforming their lives.
We're currently in Nusayrat Primary School in Nusayrat, in the middle area in the central Gaza Strip. And this is one of the UNRWA shelters. But what I'm going to show you today is a little bit different. classrooms that holding music and singing sessions. UNRWA is working with Edward Said, a music organization, to hold these events and these activities every single day for these Palestinian children. So these Palestinian children are actually displaced. Most of them lost their families, most of them lost their brothers, their sisters. They also do not have any shelter. They're living inside this school. Those Palestinian children are now singing songs about Palestine and about Gaza, and most of these songs are talking about how beautiful Gaza is.
عصفور طل من الشباك واللي يلونه تعزف على آلة الكمان المغنية.
I've been playing the violin for 4 years and I sing. When the war broke out, I decided to no longer be a student but to teach children to play the violin instead. Through music, they can process their trauma, the sounds they've heard, the bombing, the things they've seen in this war. Mohammed used to play the oud, but after losing his hand, I chose the violin for him. I wanted him to have hope in his life and to not give up on his dream of playing music.
I was displaced from the Jabalia refugee camp. I used to play music before the war, and I've kept playing. I lost my hand when I was injured in July. It has become normal to lose a limb in Gaza. I don't care that I lost part of my arm. I'm going to carry on with my life.
Children in Gaza listen to sad sounds all day long. The sound of the bombs, the worries of their parents. We need to change that. We want them to hear music instead, especially music that is part of their culture. We want them to learn patriotic Palestinian songs.
World, my land is burning. That's what Palestinian children in an UNRWA shelter singing as there is fear, destruction, and grief where those Palestinian children lose their beloved ones and their family members. They're singing to the world in a classroom where they're supposed to be receiving education, but they're displaced here from different areas in the Gaza Strip, asking and singing to the world to give them childhood. This is Hind al-Khudari, Al Jazeera, Nusayrat, Gaza, Palestine.
Introducing Gideon Levy, who's economist with the Israeli newspaper Haaretz. He joins us from Tel Aviv. Welcome back, Gideon. So this is the last day of our special coverage on the one-year anniversary of the start of Israel's war on Gaza. And as you may have guessed, we're focusing on resilience. And parallels are often drawn between Palestine and South Africa and its fight to end apartheid, something that required resilience from its leaders, Nelson Mandela, F.W. de Klerk, but not without a huge amount of groundwork internationally in the form of boycotts, sanctions against the apartheid state. Where might, Gideon, that determination, that resilience need to come from now to help bring an end to the bloodshed?
First of all, those scenes are heartbreaking, I must tell you. It's very hard to watch it and very hard to be an Israeli and to watch it. In the same time, I would like to tell you that there is one fatal difference between South Africa and Palestine, and this is namely the position of the international community. The international community was very active about South Africa and quite united. About Israel, the international community, Israel and Palestine, the international community is totally indifferent. I mean, it does nothing. And that's a major difference, because I'm sure that apartheid would have stayed until this very moment if not the intervention of the international community. In the same time, let's not forget the leadership that the blacks had in South Africa, which the Palestinians unfortunately are lacking. I obviously mean Nelson Mandela. But by the end of the day, they don't seem to break. And your coverage just showed it, how far they are from breaking. And this gives some hope. But I must tell you that still after 1 year, the Palestinians are still quite abandoned, quite helpless. And right now, I don't see who is going to protect them and who is going to save them.
We often hear, Gideon, from Palestinians who say we are resilient simply because we don't have any other choice. I want to know about those voices where you are in Israel, yours included, who have been critical of your government's abuses of power, those Israeli human rights groups like B'Tselem that have shone a light into the horrific abuse being carried out in Israeli jails against Palestinian detainees. The list there in Israel goes on, doesn't it? Where does the resilience to go against the grain come from within Israel itself, to advocate for a path of peace above all others?
So first of all, let's keep proportion. Those are very, very, very tiny groups, and they became even smaller ever since the 7th of October. Me personally, I was never so lonely like in the last year, because Israel turned its back, including big parts of the so-called peace camp, and left, turned its back to the Palestinian sufferer. It doesn't interest the Israelis, and the media doesn't cover it, because what they have done to us on the 7th. I mean, this enabled Israel, the atrocities of the 7th of October enable Israel now, A, to do whatever it wants, B, not to feel any kind of human emotions, empathy, nothing toward the sufferer of the Palestinians. And still there are some very, very small groups and mainly individuals who feel and speak differently. It's becoming almost illegal and illegitimate to express any kind of empathy toward the Palestinians in Israel. If you are an Israeli Palestinian, you might find yourself in jail, like many did find themselves in jail, only because they paid some kind of empathy to the children of. So things right now are very dark.
Gideon, there is a strong consensus, particularly in this part of the world, across the Middle East, that the United States appears to have lost control when it comes to being able to control Israel, influence Israel. Either that or the US is actively complicit in the violence. What has the conflict shown about the resilience of American authority, do you think?
No, they didn't lose control. They didn't look for control. The Americans could control this whole event from the beginning in a different way, and they chose deliberately not to do so. They have leverages and they decided not to use them. Don't be mistaken. If the Americans would have wanted to stop the war or at least to limit Israel, they could easily do it, but they chose not to do it for their own reasons. Even though their rhetoric was very impressive, their actions were made them full partners of the war and full partners of the massacre.
All right, Gideon, always a pleasure to have you on Al Jazeera. Gideon Levy, columnist with the Israeli newspaper Haaretz, joining us there from the Israeli city of Tel Aviv.
Thank you.
Many thanks.
Thank you.
A displaced grandmother in central Gaza is using her sewing skills to make clothes for her children in her refugee camp. She says it's a difficult task because of a lack of materials and her own failing health, but that it's worth it to see how happy her creations make the people around her.
اسمي راوية يحيى درويش مقاط. هذه كانت طوب صلاة انحرق بدي احوله لبلطلون. هيو انا لسه بخيط فيه، بجمع فيه، بعمله ايش؟ بلطلون. هذا كان بلطلون كبير، حجم كبير وخربان مغيط، يعني مرمي. في شرط من الرابش وجابت لي اياه، حولت لها اياه لترنجة من اول الصيف وبتلبسها. لا وفي اطفال كثير انا حولت لهم حاجات كثير حلوه، تقوم ترنجات. استقريت في الدير انا واسرتي اللي مكونه من 14 نفر. في عندي 2 معاقين، ولد وبنت، بنت عمرها 15، ولد عمره 17 سنه. انا لما جيت هنا على المخيم هذا ابن الولد هنا ما فيش له ملابس، فاضطريت اخيط على ايدي واحول الملابس القديمه الى ملابس يلبسوهم. فخيطت يعني لابن ابني وخيطت للمخيم كله، يعني صاروا الناس يجيبوا لي، ولقيت كثير يعني في ناس بتحب انها ما فيش عندهم ملابس حابين يغيروا، فجابوا له أنا بديت أخيط لهم. والله بحس إني عملت حاجة حلوة كتير، لأني بشوف اللي عملت له القطعة فرحان، فأنا بفرح معاه لأني عملت له حاجة مش قادر هو يشتريها ولا قادر يعملها، فبحب أفرح الناس، بحب أعملهم وأفرحهم. بتمنى تكون عندي طاقة شمسية إن أخيط في الليل كمان، يكون عندي إضاءة إن أخيط في الليل، وبتمنى يكون عندي ماكينة، لأنه خياطة الإيدين والله بتتعب، واللي بيعرف يخيط بيعرف الكلام اللي أنا بحكيه، بس رغم هيك إني بتحمل وبخيط مع إنه معي ضغط أنا، وأما يعني عيني بيجعوني، لكن بستمر بالخياطة.
An agricultural engineer has created a solar-powered cooker and water purifier in Gaza without using solar panels. Ines Al Ghul salvaged glass and mirrors to build her two machines that solve two of the strip's most pressing issues, the lack of fuel to cook and the lack of clean drinking water. She explained to us how her inventions work.
مهندسة إيناس الغول، مهندسة زراعية بشتغل في وزارة الزراعة، موجودة في خان يونس اللي هي جنوب قطاع غزة. من معاناة الشعب كله بتطلع أفكار كتيرة للناس. أنا واحدة من الناس اللي طلعت فكرة الطباخ الشمسي وفكرة المقطر الشمسي. المقطر الشمسي فكرته نبعت من المعاناة اللي إحنا بنعاني فيها من شحة المياه الحلوة، غير هيك تملح في المياه، غير هيك تلوث في المياه، ملح يمكن على الأطراف. بتبدأ عملية التبخر ثم عملية التكثيف على السطح المائل حتى شوفوا في قطرات هنا مبينة، يعني كتير واضح القطرات. طيب لأنه شغال الجهاز، هاي المياه الحلوة واصلة للقمة. المية النازلة من الجهاز حتنزل هنا، حتمر في مرحلتين، في من التنقية بالفحم النشط، هاي مرحلة، وبنزل هيك هاي المرحلة الثانية، وبتنزل في البرميل بعد هيك بتصير صالحة للشرب. خالية من التلوث، من البحر ملوث عندنا، وخالية من الأملاح تماما، لأن هذا الجهاز معمول ل 20 شخص أو 25 شخص تقريبا. إحنا 3 أشخاص بس في البيت. النازحين لما أجوا صاروا يشربوا من هذا المية. كنت عاملاه بشكل متصل داير مدور مركز الإيواء، كانوا يشربوا منه ومبسوطين منه، وما عانينا من أزمة تيجي سيارة عربية المية ما فيش مية، يصير يتخانقوا على المية، طوابير، المشاكل دي كلها ما عانينا منها نهائيا في المنطقة هذه. الطباخ الشمسي أيضا يعمل على الطاقة الشمسية، هو عبارة عن مرايا تعكس أشعة الشمس، طبعا احنا بنوجهها على أشعة الشمس، تعكس أشعة الشمس على الأكل الموجود في داخل صندوق الخشبي هذا واللي عليه لوح زجاجي. بنحط هنا الأكل ويتم إغلاقه. شوف كيف يصير إغلاق تام بحيث إنه ما يصير في أي هدر للحرارة. هذا بنستخدمه في كل شيء يخطر في بالك، كل أنواع الطهي بنطهو عليه، حتى سلق البيض، حتى الخبز الفينو بنعمل فيه، الكيكة بنعمل فيها، كل شيء يخطر في بالك. أنا استغنيت عن جرة الغاز، جرة الغاز ضلت عندي من 6 شهور إلى سنة، ما عانيت نهائيا من مشكلة الغاز، وهو بديل وحل لأزمة جرة الغاز.
Now, with all of Gaza's universities destroyed, students determined not to give up their studies are learning online instead. Medical student Iman Ayad has to borrow a laptop from her friends and is constantly searching for a reliable internet connection and a place to charge her devices. But despite the practical hurdles, she says that she won't let the war get in the way of her graduating.
My name is Iman Ayad. I'm 22, in my 4th year medical student. So I'm a Gazian, a Palestinian. From the 7th of October, all our life was like being the opposite, completely the opposite. There is no place actually to complete our studying. So there is no comfortable place. There is no place just out of noise here in Gaza. We now actually live in tent. So there is no place to study. There is no way to study. And actually my laptop, my iPad in Gaza, and now I just use my friend laptop. We take our classes online, and it's supposed to be in one time, you know, maybe 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock. So I need to find a place, an internet place, and the internet connection was supposed to be good. I chose to continue my studying because I study medicine. Medicine means life. I want to help the people of Gaza as much as possible, you know. And I need to complete my study so that I can help the Gazian people, my people. I cannot be just in my tent seeing my people suffering, and I can help. So as soon as I can help, I will help. Even if it take my energy, my time, I totally come to my tent in the evening and say, oh, why I keep fighting? Why? Should I give up? Actually, should I give up or not? And in the morning of the other day, okay, let's go to the hospital and help. Hey, how are you?
Well, many Palestinians in Gaza have made the very difficult decision to leave the occupied territories, and some have found success abroad, but they say their thoughts are never far from their homeland of Palestine. Sonia Gallego reports from the UK.
It is a dream many harbour, but only the best of the best manage to realise. For Salim Lubad from northwest Gaza, studying engineering at Oxford University was beyond the realm of possibility. Yet not only did he achieve it, he is using it to further his research into nuclear fusion in the hope of creating a breakthrough in the world's energy supplies.
Being Palestinian, like your whole life, is defined by conflict. Solving the energy problem in the world could go a long way in resolving conflict, because at least we would have, or at least I would like to think that we would give people one less thing to fight over.
A dream informed, he says, by his Palestinian identity and experience.
Living under occupation, living under siege, living in Gaza means that you always have to dream. All these restrictions don't make people feel the despair. Instead, it makes them more determined on changing how they live. And this is the one thing that the occupation can't take away from us, because we dream about things and then we find a way.
An emotion echoed by Suha Abukash, a doctor who runs her own cosmetic clinic in London. A successful business, yet her own life mirrors that of many in the Palestinian diaspora, where movement and home go hand in hand.
That insecure sense of having to go is in you from day one. The feeling that you have all the time is you're doing this as part of your people, as part of a journey that you're on to be able to help your people.
It's a story of triumph over adversity, but distance is no antidote to the pain that those who left still feel. The reality for them is that the ties to Gaza are as strong as ever.
It is not an easy mindset. You always want to go home. You always want to be part of your community. You want that stability and safety that the world has given to all its citizens. You want that basic human right of being able to go home and work for your people and establish yourself and raise your children amongst your family and people. So that burning in you.
And there is the memory of generations past and the responsibility to their families, to the people themselves, in the face of Israel's devastating war.
You don't have the chance to feel sorry for yourself. You don't have the chance to feel victimized. You need to keep going and you need to succeed for your people.
And the reminder that the value they place on success is for the greater good.
The only way is forward, and the only way is to try to find ways where whatever privileges I or other people or my friends or the people I know, we might have and enjoy, how that could be used to make the world a better place.
A sentiment shared by many in the Palestinian diaspora who've been forced out of their homeland because of decades of occupation and war. Sonia Gallego, Al Jazeera, London.
Well, earlier I spoke to Ahmed Najjar, who is a playwright and director who moved to the UK from Gaza back in 2003. Ahmed said he says Israel is trying to wipe away Palestinian identity, but that it will not succeed.
To carry on our identity and to keep going in the face of, I would call, is a cultural genocide as well as a genocide against the people. The censorship that we are facing, particularly in the West and in my case in the UK, that feels it's more needed than ever, that we keep going and we keep being more and more creative and more persistent to emphasize the Palestinian identity and to emphasize our existence. It does sound really, in a way, it brings you down in some cases, because it's just us fighting to tell the world that we exist, and you can tell how horrible is that to be doing. But in a way, it's our only hope for the Palestinian cause to come out there to the world, and for the people in the West particularly to understand that Palestinians are deeply rooted and have a deeply rooted culture in the region, and they haven't just come from nowhere. Because I think it's many people don't actually really grasp the actual problem there, and they just think it's a conflict between two people. And some people would be surprised, actually. Some people might think the Palestinians are occupying Israel, and that is how kind of bizarre for us to come and having to face the distorted facts in the West.
Ahmed, it's a story of unimaginable loss, and as you say, at the heart of it all, still a shred of hope. I mean, you know loss very keenly, don't you? Because your cousin Rashad Abu Sakila was killed just a few weeks ago on September the 10th. He, I understand, was 23 years old and was Palestine's youngest published poet. I wonder if you would be comfortable sharing some of his poetry for us.
Yeah, sure. He was a very beautiful poet, and I was lucky to attend the launch of his book in Gaza in 2021. And the way he was reading it and narrating his poems was incredible. I really had a goosebump when he was reading it, and I'm gonna read some of his poems, and I really hope I do justice for his poems. Obviously, this is translated, but he was writing, all of his writing were in Arabic. O writer of history, record my story, for I am buried within my sighs. O writer of history, a blooming melody, yet the flowers melt away in my sorrows. A tyrant of tyranny, the drones of my homeland, machines march over my remains alone here. Bullets betrayed my rifles, even the echoes does not return my cries. And he actually wrote quite a lot of poems, and not just about homeland, but he was a very diversified poet, and used the classic Arabic. It's such a loss. It's such a huge loss, and we know there are many artists and poets and writers have been killed in this genocide in Gaza. And worth remembering here as well that the first thing Israel attacked in Gaza were actually the universities, and that's came with a clear intention of destroying the identity before killing the people. So this is what we are really facing, and I tell you, living in the UK and having to face this every day, and having to tell the people around you through writing, through plays that we try to do here in the UK, that the Palestinians exist. The Palestinians have the deeply rooted culture. We are getting a lot of support, obviously, from a lot of people who started to understand, and we are getting people who actually also never cared about politics are starting to wanting to understand and wanting to get involved, which is promising for us.
The months of October and November mark the olive harvest season for Palestinians, but in the past year, the UN says at least 1 million olive trees have been uprooted by the Israeli military in Gaza. Despite the destruction, Palestinians continue to honour the tradition of olive picking as an act of resilience. Lina Abu Akla has this report.
In the middle of displacement, The olive harvest remains a moment of unity in Gaza. Palestinians say it is a symbol of resistance. From the farmers to their grandchildren, families in Deir al-Balah gather to pick olives from the few remaining trees.
This year is totally different. Our trees have been seized and destroyed by the Israeli military. We crave the olives and the oil we used to produce from our trees.
Rooted in tradition, culture, and national identity. For Palestinians, the olive picking is a season that celebrates their connection to their land. But the annual ritual is overshadowed by Israel's destruction of more than 60% of Gaza's farmland, and the uprooting of at least 1 million olive trees in the past year.
This is our land. We used to own 12 hectares, all planted with olive trees, but the Israeli occupation soldiers destroyed our farms. Not only did they cut down all the trees, but they also bulldozed the whole farmland. We are left with those few olive trees only, which we are now picking.
Olive groves that date back to centuries have been reduced to ashes in Gaza, depriving families of their only source of income.
We used to produce more than 500 liters of olive oil. This was our livelihood. We used to live on the produce of our land. The Israelis have turned it into scorched land.
From the olive oil to the soap, olives are a staple in every Palestinian household and vital to the national economy.
The Israeli occupation forces have deliberately destroyed this vital economy sector, not only through cutting down the olive trees, but also bulldozing entire farmlands. They also willfully destroyed nearly all of the olive mills. As a result, this year's harvest, which used to produce more than 20,000 tons of olives, is now ruined.
This is just one aspect of Palestinian culture that's been attacked in Gaza. But people say they are determined to carry on.
We are holding our ground steadfast, as firm as the Rocky Mountains. We will rebuild Gaza and replant our farmlands. It will be even better than before. We are life-loving people.
Despite all attempts to uproot the people and their trees, Palestinians continue to preserve their heritage. And remain defiant in the face of oppression. Lina Abu Akleh, Al Jazeera.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.